as I said earlier, this is an unwanted byproduct of the organic coconut industry that's renewed sustainably every year. It has excellent water-retaining properties. And although an inert product, when you mix it with other ingredients and nutrients, it makes a wonderful growing medium, which is particularly pleasant to handle and use on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm. The only thing I suppose I would ask on that score is, because it is coconut fibre and coconuts are grown overseas, are there any concerns with shipping it over?
No, we actually looked at this at one point, and we found there was obviously a lot of people who were talking about the carbon footprint of transferring. The coir is compressed into very small bales, and large quantities of the coir are shipped in one container. And we actually worked out that actually the carbon footprint was greater using our diesel lorries to transport the coir from the port to our site here in Herefordshire than it actually was to transport it across the world from Sri Lanka, which is where we get our organic coir from. Mm-hmm. And I think as time has gone on and people have realised that where you've got waste products which aren't being utilised, there's also a very good case for using those products in a constructive way that protects other areas that are vulnerable to exploitation, like our peat bogs. Mm-hmm. So, on balance, we've always felt that that there's a justifiable carbon footprint to transport this waste product from one side of the world to the other side of the world.
I wonder what happens to it if you don't take it away. Do you know what happens to it if it's just treated as a waste product?
There was actually a very good, I can always remember, I think it was Jeff Hamilton, and I'm sure your listeners can pick it up on YouTube. He did a wonderful series called A Man in His Garden and A Friend of the Earth. And he actually looked at this very specific problem and found mountains of coir. These are very small fibres which aren't useful to use in making string or bristles for brushes or anything like that. And there was vast quantities of this waste product mounted up in areas of really outstanding natural beauty and tropical forests, which were not able to be used. And of course, the wonderful thing about the coir is that now it's widely available and widely used in the horticultural system. And it's really found a wonderful use for this byproduct, which until this point hadn't really found a use. Mm-hmm. So I think it's been a win-win for all of us, really.
Yeah. Just to kind of pick up on that and your obvious, expertise on this, because I am going a little bit off piste and I'm throwing questions at you that I'd not kind of sent you previously to look over or to prep on. But what came through to me, as I was saying, when I went to a trade show and I was having a lot of struggles trying to get information out of different manufacturers about the provenance of their products, there was a lot of vagueness, and there were people who were perhaps saying that they had certain credentials, but they could not back it up, or they would not back it up. And what I think is sometimes products like, like yours may not be the cheapest product on the market, but what you're paying for, and we should remember this as consumers kind of across the board really, is we're paying for the expertise that you have, and we're paying for the research that you do, and we're paying for the thought that you put into sourcing products, which is not a given. I'm not always saying price means that it's the best product on the market, but people do need to realise sometimes you just have to pay a little bit extra to get all of this background to it. There's a mass of knowledge that's gone into developing your products, and it is important, and people I think just need to remember that sometimes when they're making purchasing decisions. Anyway, that's me off my soapbox. So could you maybe just tell me a little bit about vermiculite and perlite as well, please, where they come from, and are they okay to use?
Yeah, certainly both vermiculite and perlite are naturally occurring minerals which are heat treated to expand their volume. Both have a pretty neutral pH, and both are lightweight, stable, sterile compounds that really enhance the structure of the growing mediums when they're mixed into them. Vermiculite is a soft, spongy material made from superheated mica, which has very good insulation properties. It's highly absorbent. It's particularly good at holding on to moisture. And it holds on to the added nutrients to feed seedlings, plants, cuttings for sort of faster optimum growth. So great in our seed mixes. Perlite, hard, highly porous material made by superheating volcanic glass or obsidian, which, again, improves soil aeration. Very important to have these air spaces in soil to allow roots to breathe. And that, again, allows excess moisture to drain quickly. They're both very environmentally friendly components within many composts, which do break down slowly into their sort of naturally occurring silicates. Silicates, the second most common element on Earth after oxygen. So a very wide element within our world.
So if I had some vermiculite or perlite in a potting mix and I chucked it on my compost heap, or I just threw a bit on my garden, it wouldn't hurt. It would eventually just break down into the soil or into its components.
Absolutely fine. And indeed, I've been doing that for some 15 odd years, and it's just vanished into the soil structure. Yeah. Wonderful.
Okay. And the last component that we spoke about was the bark. Where do you source that from?
Yes, well, we source British bark, and again, you were talking about the prices of all these sorts of things, and you do, of course, pay a premium for premium products, and across the board, our products are all very carefully sourced, which does involve a small additional cost. The British bark is, again, not only from Soil Association approved sources, but all the bark products hold the Forest Stewardship Council certification. And this is a council which promotes the responsible management of world forests. Mm-hmm. Again, the bark products can be used to mix and adapt, and you can tailor your own composts. The bark mulch is great for weed suppression. And I love to use the composted bark, which is much finer by comparison, for top dressing pots and for repotting plants like orchids that like a low nutrient medium.
Mm-hmm. And good to use as a mulch because it's really light. And if you're lazy like me, it's quite easy to apply. So that's always a bonus.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
And so you sell all of these elements on their own, don't you? So if people wanted to make their own mix, they could do that. They could just purchase the components and then mix them together as they saw fit.
Yeah, of course. People are more than welcome to do that. And we obviously sell the blocks and bales of coir, which are the compressed dry coir. And again, there are lots of uses for that once hydrated. The inert material is great mixed with your own homemade compost or your leaf mould. You can add it to borders or vegetable beds to improve soil structure and add humus. Mm-hmm. Great for clay soils if you're in the London area. And of course, the wonderful Jeff Hamilton also used to use coir as one of the ingredients in his famous artificial rocks, which he developed to stop the decimation of the fragile ecosystems of the limestone pavements and to provide gardeners with an alternative rock to use in their rockeries or, for example, around ponds. And we still get customers ringing up requiring the coir bales and blocks for such projects.
Yeah, I love that. I love the thought of people making rocks in their gardens. Sounds like another thing that I might have a go at if I'm ever bored on a weekend. And yes, you mentioned putting the coir on the garden. How do you apply it to the garden?
Again, you've got two ways of doing it, really. You can either just rehydrate the coir, typically put a 5 kilo bale in a wheelbarrow and pour water on the top and leave it for a couple of hours, and it will soak up the water and then it will naturally break apart. Or when I've been feeling a little bit lazier and I've had a large border that is looking particularly tired, I've scattered the bales on the top of the borders and allowed the rain, of which we normally have plenty of, to do the work for me. And I can literally have a couple of days of rain, and then that will be enough to rehydrate those bales for me. They will naturally break down at that point, and I could just dig them into the borders, improving the soil structure.
I wonder how they work, because I spoke to a representative from Bug Life about worms, and he was saying that sometimes the worms don't like the products that are things like coir because they're not a native material. They will prefer to incorporate things like the leaves into the soil. So I do wonder what the worm population makes of the coir, if it makes any difference.
Yes, I must admit, it's never appeared to affect the population of worms breaking up the soils that where I've used them, particularly in my garden in Herefordshire. But then, of course, really by comparison, the fibres are spread fairly thin across the surfaces of the of a border and are dug in. So worms will have plenty of other opportunities to use some of the other soil elements there. Yeah. Whether it's a problem if you just use coir, I don't know. I've never just used coir. It's always been mixed in with a soil base, really.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's interesting. It's brilliant. And what I like most, I think, about there's lots of things I like about your products, but you can actually just chuck the whole lot on the garden and there's not going to be any sort of detrimental effects, and it's all... So actually, that is a good point. The vegan products, are they organic as well?
Yes, of course. Everything's organic. So everything we do is organic. So right. The vegan products just have the only difference really with the vegan products is that we do all the individual products such as the bark and the vermiculite and the coir fit the vegan brief and fit their criteria. The only thing that doesn't fit their criteria, obviously, is some of the fertilisers that we perhaps use in the other mixes. So we've adapted this special vegan fertiliser to conform to the rules and regulations that the Vegan Society have asked us to work to.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Do you know if you are the only company that's producing Vegan Society approved compost?
I actually don't know the answer to that question. I know that there aren't very many of us that are Soil Association approved and Vegan Society approved. We're certainly in the minority. I can't, off the top of my head, think of another company that does Vegan Society approved composts. And I believe there's only one other that does Soil Association approved composts. Okay. But inevitably, people are making up new mixes all the time, and it's possible that there are other ones out there.
I did try and check on the Vegan Society website actually, but their database wasn't working, and I tried to phone, and that was no help either. So I gave up in the end. So if there are any, they can also get in touch.
Of course, we're very much accessible to anybody. We're in the office, we're on the phones. If anybody's got any questions or anything particular that they want to ask, we're more than happy to field questions and to answer them to the best of our ability. Brilliant.
And where's the best place for them to actually buy the compost and the other products?
Well, the best way really is to buy through our website. These are organic products which carry a high premium. And we want to make sure that customers get those in the very best conditions. So they're new mixes, they're freshly mixed. There's also lots of other information on the website, which we hope will be of interest to anybody trying to learn a bit more about coir-based composts. And of course, we'd also like to offer your listeners of this podcast a 10% discount to encourage them to try any of the products. Just use the code ROOTS10 at the checkout.
Brilliant. That is amazing. Thank you for that. I am going to avail myself of that offer for sure.
And, fantastic.
I'm going to definitely test it out. I haven't tried it yet, actually. So I'm, very, very excited about it. I don't think that you can get a better pedigree than what the compost has. So I am very much looking forward to trying it.
Good. No, well, we're certainly very proud of the fact that our composts are Soil Association approved. And, the Soil Association in particular is the UK's largest certification body with over 70 years of experience in organic growing. And we work very closely with them to ensure that everything we use in our composts is traceably organic and approved by them. And, we're inspected annually to ensure that we're continuing to uphold their high values and their organic principles, and that everything we use is traceable back to source. And that's also true both of the Vegan Society and the Biodynamic Society. We think that this traceability is really important, and this annual inspections by all these bodies is a really useful way of making sure that we maintain very high standards and that those standards don't drop at all over the course of a year or